Hello, good day class. This is Dr. Mubarak A. Saulawa from the Department of Education, Bayero University, Kano. And this is a recording, or this is a kind of presentation for the 2020/2021 session, where we are going to introduce to you to philosophy and logic, that is GSP 2205. In this course, it is expected that we are going to treat module 3. I'm going to be the one to navigate you with this module, and the title of the module 3 is talking about science and analysis of reality using the branches of philosophy. If we look at the general overview of this module, we're talking about the fact that by the end of this module, it is hoped that I hope to achieve this objective. That is for you to be able to appreciate the definitions of science, reality, and philosophy. From there, we can also go, and we're also going to be discussing the branches of philosophy and how they affect our reality. Talking about metaphysics. Under metaphysics, we shall discuss cosmology, ontology, and theology. While under epistemology, it is hoped that we're going to look at the meanings and the major types of knowledge, sources of knowledge, and the analysis of knowledge that and knowledge how. We shall come to see the difference between these two. Again, on the third branch of philosophy, that is speaking of axiology, or the theory of value, we are going to look at the meanings of value, the categories of value, that is talking about moral and non-moral value, intrinsic and extrinsic value. We're talking about objective and subjective values. And then we are now going to look at the second part of the value theory, that is speaking of ethics. Under ethics, we are going to discuss ethics and aesthetics. Under aesthetics, we will briefly discuss issues of meta-ethics. Maybe we'll look at the theories of naturalism, intuitionism, and maybe emotivism. And of course, under aesthetics, that is where we are going to look at the science of appreciation and the creation of beauty, as they say. And then finally, we shall go to see what we are going to do. Now, as a way of introduction, we should know that the search for meanings in life is primarily conducted by religion, science, and philosophy. Of course, we do that in religion. We are trying to look for the meanings of life, and when we look at science, again, science look at it from a different perspective, while philosophy looks at it from a comprehensive perspective as well. Of course, we might note that while the religions, upon belief in the supreme God, seek for meanings through his science and creations, as well as prayers and contemplation, by living a good life as a preparation for the hereafter. Of course, that is what we do. Science, on the other hand, merely seeks the knowledge of facts, talking about their interpretation using what is called the objective scientific methods of observation, experimentation, and of course description. Philosophy, like I said earlier, philosophy seeks for the ultimate nature of knowledge of facts, their significance and synthesis of these identified facts, and this in a total and comprehensive manner that is taking both the results of the religions and sciences, and by reflecting upon the whole. This is what actually philosophy does. So now, if we look at some conceptual clarifications, given the title at hand, we're going to do some clarifications on the issues of reality, science, and philosophy. And of course, this is going to help us to answer the questions talking about what is reality, what is science, and then what is philosophy. When we use the word reality in philosophy, we are of course referring to the totality of the real things in the world that are objectively independent. The real things that are objectively independent of human perception, which means the things and phenomena which actually exist in real life situations. This is talking about reality, of course, because we're talking about that thing. Well, what do you mean that this is real? This is something you can see, you can touch, you can hear, even if you cannot see it or touch it, it still does exist. This is talking about reality. And then when we look at science, on the other hand, like they say, is that body of knowledge which is used in the objective study of material world and natural phenomena. As this is, of course, this definition was given by Carter Encyclopedia, but of course we should know that how does science kind of relate with philosophy? Because the fact that it is looking for knowledge, it is seeking for objective knowledge of this material world, as we can see it, and talking about natural phenomena, then philosophy has a way of trying to get things from it, because philosophy has this kind of comprehensive curiosity. This comprehensive curiosity that makes you to kind of look for the actual meanings of things and, of course, of life. So this is why when we look at philosophy, as Akin Crowley would define it, he said it's a synoptic discipline in which all facts and information from diverse other disciplines are integrated and synthesized to give a comprehensive perspective. In this definition, if we look at it, he is saying that, of course, just like the way C.D. Broad will put it, he said that the object of this philosophy actually is for it to gather the information or the findings from the religious sciences and from the religious sciences, and to add to it, that is talking about to add to it. Yeah, I mean, as C.D. Broad would argue, he said that the object of speculative philosophy is to take over the results from the sciences and then add to it ethical and religious experiences, and to reflect upon the whole. What are we trying to say here is that when philosophy is kind of taking this comprehensive perspective or curiosity, it is leaving no stone untouched. It would want a comprehensive view of the universe, and it is on this account that it does this. It gets all the facts that it can, all the facts and information that it can get from the scientific findings. And then usually you should know that science doesn't actually take care of all these ethics and what do you call it, and religious issues. But philosophy, on the other hand, is of the view that this is like living a particular very important reality that is very obvious in front of us, simply because science cannot use its own tools and techniques to find such kind of findings, and it will now kind of disregard the existence of such facts. So now let us continue to define philosophy. Like, this is what C.D. Broad has to say, but when we look at it from an academic field of study, Saulawa in 2014 defined this field as the art of making critical clarifications through analysis and reading between the lines, in order to illuminate or cast light into the darkness of ignorance, so as to come up with rational answers to the questions of reality, knowledge, and values. When we look at this definition, actually, you should know that usually people used to say that philosophy is talking about phileo and sophia. Mostly, of course, you find out that when you are trying to define philosophy, they will tell you that it is just philosophia, talking about philia or love of, or the pursuit of something, while sophia, on the other hand, talking about wisdom. So simply that when you are defining philosophy, you are simply talking about the search for wisdom. And you might ask yourself this question: why do we have these issues of doctor of philosophy? When someone, they say this is a doctor of philosophy, what does that mean? Doctor of philosophy is simply talking about that individual has reached the pinnacle of his own search for knowledge in that particular area of study, wherever he is making or wherever he is conducting his studies. It is expected that when someone is called a PhD or a doctor of philosophy, that person has reached the highest peak of on the search for his own knowledge in that particular area. And this is not actually saying that he has known everything pertaining that course. Only saying that that individual is well learned and is well versed in that particular area of study, because you found out that the fact that he's a doctor of philosophy, and mark you, this doctor of philosophy is not only is in all academic disciplines, irrespective of whatever you're studying, whether you're studying philosophy or not. And people might be asking me that what is the difference between a philosopher and someone who is a doctor of philosophy? Well, what actually matters is for you to synthesize your societal problems and solve them. That is just what we're talking about here. And then when you look at this definition from a critical angle, we found out that when you say that it is the art of making critical clarification, is talking about clarifying issues. You know, there are some individuals who believe that in this life, philosophy shouldn't even concern itself with talking about prescriptive modes of doing philosophy. For instance, now when we're talking about the modes of doing philosophy or the methods of doing philosophy, they will now say that it's better for you to just analyze problem for people. When you analyze the problem, you allow them to solve their own problems. They believe that people like Hardy Schofield, in his own book, of course, that is Introduction to the Philosophy of Education, Hardy Schofield gave us some kind of background, saying that before the coming of these people, that is speaking of Ludwig Wittgenstein. Ludwig Wittgenstein, when he came up with the idea that in his book titled Tractatus Logico Philosophicus, that whenever a problem, whenever there is a problem in the society, whenever people are in conflict, it is just as a matter of issues of misunderstanding of language, or what they used to call communication gap. Therefore, philosophy should concern itself with the clarification of language, clarification of contexts, contextual meanings of words, and how people should really fathom one another, that is, understand each other when they are talking or when they are even communicating in general. So that if philosophy can do this, then it doesn't have to do more, because if it does that, it has solved all people's problems. There is not going to be any war, there's not going to be conflict. But this is another angle which they think that the philosophers should take themselves. Of course, it was not only Ludwig Wittgenstein that was a proponent of this particular movement. Of course, it was a movement what they call the analytic revolution in philosophy, because after the philosophical giants came, there was this issues or problems of how we can set standards for philosophy. Of course, it was then these people like G.E. Moore, that is George Edward Moore, came in, and he was kind of behind this Ludwig's idea of analysis. People like A.J. Ayer, that is Alfred Jules Ayer, was also of that view when he came with his own argument, saying that there should even be this kind of these issues of crucifixion of metaphysics. He thinks that metaphysics doesn't give much contribution to knowledge as we speak. But I think he's wrong, because you cannot say that metaphysics cannot just give you understandings of life, because we are spiritual beings, whether we like it or not. But then, this is speaking of how philosophy is entering into science and trying to make us understand our own reality. Trying to make us understand our own reality. So, when we look at issues like this, well, this is talking about these issues of clarifications. Now, talking about reading between the lines. When you're reading between the lines, it is simply talking about the way in philosophy we look at uh, sound and unsound arguments, how we try to balance between the skills when someone is trying to bring us some argument and is trying to argue things out. We try to look at the logical fallacies that are inherent in that kind of proposition or statement which people are making. So this is where we are going to kind of give you a brief introduction of these issues of logic and how they apply in philosophy, because we philosophers, like they used to say, do not make use of uh, statistical tools in analyzing our own problems and issues. Rather, we make use of logic, and through this logic, we use different techniques to see how we can find out the soundness and otherwise of arguments. And then, when we're talking about issues of making talking about illumination or casting light to the darkness of ignorance, of course, when we try to clarify things to people, of course, you are making them come out of darkness, because knowledge, as they used to say, is light. Knowledge and information is actually talking about bringing people to a particular level of understanding. And when we look at issues like coming up with rational answers to the questions of reality, when we say that something is rational, then it is backed up by reason. This is why we talk about reason, and of course, reason is simply talking about logic. Are we getting it? That is why when you say rational answer to the questions of reality, what is reality? Reality is simply talking about metaphysics, yeah. Knowledge, on the other hand, is talking about one other branch of philosophy, which is what? Epistemology, and values, which is the third branch of philosophy. From this definition of Saulawa, of course, you find out that it is telling you this is how Axiology, which is the third branch of philosophy, that is metaphysics, metaphysics. Remember, when we're talking about these polytheistic and monotheistic, the monotheistic religions, as we all know, these are religions such as Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. They all believe in the oneness of God. While the polytheistic, we are simply talking about the Eastern religions as well as the African religions, because they believe in the existence of different deities or different gods. They believe that they do believe in the divine God, but there are still some semi-gods who one has to actually find ways of relating to before we can connect to the super being up there. So this is actually what they can talk about. Then this polytheistic, like we said, religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, all these isms, Buddhism, Shintoism, you can talk about Zoroastrianism, all these are polytheistic religions. But the monotheistic are actually being solely talking about the existence of one God. Now, let us move to epistemology. Uh, Epistemology, of course, if you look at the concept of epistemology, is very important. This is talking about epistem and logos, as we have been moving. That is talking about epistem, which means knowledge from the Greek language, while logos talking about the study of the nature of something. And when you match the two words, you have what? Study of the nature of knowledge, from the etymology of the word or the origin of the word itself. When we look at the major kinds of knowledge, we're going to analyze the concept from knowledge that are knowledge how. For instance, now, what are the kinds of knowledge that we have? We have knowledge a priori, That is knowledge before or without experience, and knowledge what? A posteriori, knowledge after experience. This knowledge a priori is actually talking about the knowledge that we obtain without any experience. For instance, now the knowledge that we gain from the holy texts, this is knowledge that is coming without actual experience. While knowledge after experience is talking about experimental knowledge, of course, the knowledge that we actually gain as we move on with life. Now, what are we going to say when we're talking about analysis of knowledge how? Knowledge how, of course, is talking about that type of knowledge that we gain after going through a particular training. We go through a particular training from different individuals. For instance, now when you come to school, when you enroll into a program, of course you begin to learn from level 1 to 400. That is what talking about knowledge how. When someone makes a claim that I know how to drive, I know how to swim, I know how to sing, all these are types of what knowledge how. But the issues that normally come here with with this particular type of knowledge is that whenever someone is trying to say that we should look at this, I know how to do this, we are going to ask him, okay, demonstrate. Someone is going to be asked to substantiate that claim with some practical demonstration. For instance, now when you say I know how to drive a car, and I'll just say, okay, that's cool. I'll just give you my key. It is now left for you to show me that you can drive, or maybe you're just making the claim. Or when someone says I know how to cook, you just show how to the kitchen. Go, let us see how we can cook. That is what talking about knowledge how. You must undergo through some training. So if you see this in your exams, please don't be confused. Knowledge how is simply talking about the knowledge that we actually gain from what experience, and that experience has to go some level of training. While knowledge that, on the other hand, is simply talking about the information that we receive on a daily basis. The information that you hear on news, the information that you hear from others, or the so-called the hearsay, or the gossips that you also hear from your friends. It's just talking about, I had that. Someone did that, someone did this. That is simply talking about what knowledge that. Now, talking about the sources of knowledge, under epistemology, we try to see the various sources that we can obtain. There are like 6 of them here. You might find out that 3 of these sources actually fall under one of the categories of either a priori knowledge or knowledge a posteriori. Because, for instance, now knowledge by reason, knowledge by revelation, as well as knowledge by intuition. These 3 types of knowledge fall under the category of knowledge before or without experience. Of course, reason doesn't actually care about experience. It's talking about how you make use of your senses. Knowledge by revelation, like I said in the beginning, is talking about knowledge that you gain from the holy text, like the knowledge from the Quran, knowledge from the Bible, or knowledge from the Torah. These types of knowledge are actually knowledge that we obtain without experience. And knowledge from intuition, that is insightful knowledge. Knowledge by intuition, on the other hand, is talking about that knowledge that we obtain, or that knowledge that we obtain from spontaneous thinking, without actually sitting down to use our own reason, but just a kind of a flash of images to the solutions of our own problems. And when we solve our problems, that helps us to call that knowledge by intuition. And then we have knowledge by empirical knowledge. knowledge by authority or a specialist in his own field, like the doctors that we're talking about there, talking about the PhDs, or rather, the knowledge by acquaintance. When you get acquainted with someone, you try to, at a point in time, say that this individual, I know him somewhere, as a result of what experience. That is why we say these three types of knowledge, of course. And finally, when we discuss the issues of axiology, axios and logos, axios simply means of like value, or sense of worth of something, or the preferences that we put on something, while logos is talking about the study, that is study of the nature of values. That is simply what axiology means. And this axiology, like I said, is a giant branch of philosophy. From what we can see here, under axiology, we can find out that it is simply talking about the issue where we have two broad categories of areas that we speak about axiology or values here. We have the realms of value, under which we shall discuss ethics and aesthetics, and we also have the categories of value, under which it is expected of us to discuss these three key areas, that is objective and subjective, intrinsic and extrinsic, as well as moral and non-moral values. So now, let us look at the realms of value. For instance, now, under the realms of value, we are, like I said there, we are going to look at what? Ethics and aesthetics. Now, ethics. What is ethics? Under ethics, we have two areas too. That is normative as well as applied ethics. Of course, like in the beginning, I told you that we shall discuss meta-ethics too, but then we are going to limit our discussion as a matter of time for us to just grasp the issue, the argument, actually, to get the argument. What is ethics? Ethics, of course, we're simply talking about what? Talking about the science of what is acceptable and what is unacceptable, the science of what is agreed upon and what is disagreed upon. It is simply looking at how the society, how different societies rather, try to understand or try to live in harmony with one another. How the individuals in that society actually live. For instance, now, under the applied ethics, this applied ethics deals with issues directly related to what people's lives. For instance, how should we live, or how should we die? How should we relate with others? Etc. While normative ethics, on the other hand, deals with moral standards, the setting of moral standards as to what actions are right and which ones are wrong. What things should we value and which should we disregard? When you ask when you ask the question, is life worth living? All these fall under normative ethics. A typical example of this normative ethics, if we look at it, is seen in the holy text, like I used to say it, from the three monotheistic religions, that is the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran. We have the issues of written and unwritten constitutions, ground rules. When we look at ground rules in meetings, seminars, workshops, and lectures, of course, you don't dare to make noise in a lecturer's class, or maybe in a classroom. The teacher is not going to find it funny with you. All these are talking about what? Normative ethics. For instance, now we have in the Bible, we talk about these commandments, whereby God was saying that thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not gossip, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. All these injunctions are actually we're talking about standards, how people should live in harmony with one another. Like in the Quran too, maybe when you go through this verse or this surah that is talking about Surah Al-Isra, when Allah was saying, when God was saying in the Quran that وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا, that is, do not be extravagant. إِنَّ الْمُبَذِّرِينَ كَانُوا إِخْوَانِ الشَّيَاطِينَ, that all these people who are extravagant are like the brothers or the the companions of the devils, of course. That all these things that ولا تمشي في الأرض مرحا, and do not walk on earth majestically. Be what? Be humble. This life is short. Be humble and be what? Decent. All these are what forms of what standards with which our own holy texts are actually trying to set for us. That is why this is all talking about what the code of conduct, as simple as it is. That is. Now, talking about aesthetics now, this is the second area on the realms of value. We shall see that axiology, like we said, and this ethics deals with what? Feelings. Ethics deals with feelings, creativity, and appreciation of arts and creations or innovations made by some other individuals or the creator himself. That is the beauty of things. For instance, music, artistry, landscape, man, of course, as an aesthetic being, the beauty and perfections of the heavens and skies, etc. All these are talking about the receptive side on the recognition and appreciation of creativeness. This is actually referred to as aesthetic delight, as Collinson would argue. This Collinson, she told us that this aesthetic delight, when you sit down to appreciate the beauty of someone and say, "Hi, this is beautiful. I like this. I like that. This guy can sing well. This Quranic recital is a very good qari. I like this. I like that." Then you are what? You are doing what they call, you are appreciating the work of someone, and this is simply called what? Aesthetic delight. Now, talking about categories of value now. Categories of value. Like I said, we have the moral and non-moral values. Under the moral and non-moral values, we should see that when we say something is a moral value, then we are dealing with interpersonal issues between humans. When the activities of moral agent A has a direct or indirect influence on the welfare of another moral agent B, then we can say that this particular activity or relationship is what is moral. Because when I hit someone on the head and I don't actually give him some words of encouragement or words of apology, that individual is going to not take it easy with me. But when I hit my head, the highest, when someone is passing by, will look at it and say, this crazy individual, look at this crazy guy. This is simply talking about what? The issues of what? Moral issues. But non-moral, on the other hand, deals with what? Not inter here. Be conscious of the word intra-personal issues that affects or concerns you alone. These issues, these non-moral issues, for instance, now when I just simply hold my biro and break the biro, simply because it doesn't work, and I got angry and I just broke my biro, no one is going to be disturbed but me alone. And this is what we call what? A non-moral issue. When my activity as a moral agent, for instance, moral agent A, do not have any influence or any affection or any effect on the welfare of another individual by my side or anywhere else, then I now class that issue as what? A non-moral issue, because it concerns me alone. Now, talking about intrinsic and extrinsic values. Intrinsic values are simply talking about what? The appreciation of things or people solely for their own sake, and not what they can help you or what they can help us to achieve. But then, what does it mean here? This is why we discuss these issues of Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. That is, we should view others as end in themselves and not a means to an end. But intrinsic values that we place on some things can also make us to be crazy, of course. If I say that now I would just value money for the sake of having money and not using it for satisfying my wants or needs, then I can be tagged as someone who is crazy, of course. So this is why intrinsic values here should be should be understood from the perspective of actually people. While extrinsic, on the other hand, is talking about appreciation of things or people only for what they can help us to achieve. And this is where it becomes dangerous, of course. If we look at people from extrinsic perspective, then there is going to be trouble, because we are going to be callous and we are going to be cruel about people's feelings, simply being their friend, not for friendship's sake, but for the sake of what we think we can achieve through them. That is simply talking about using people. That is what intrinsic and what extrinsic. Now, if you look at the subjective, and which is the last item, which is when we look at the subjective and objective values, on the other hand, subjective values are talking about personal points of view we place on people or things or activities, e.g., love or beliefs. They look at this subjective. When they say someone is being subjective, it means that that individual is not actually being objective, or is not actually being using reason that everyone is going to universally think is true. He or she is simply looking at the whims and caprices of his own thinking. That is when we are saying that this is what a subjective value. That is why we say, like, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Sometimes you see people loving someone, dying for someone, simply because of something that is actually best known to him. He or she maybe likes something different from what people are actually seeing from outside. While objectivity or objective values, on the other hand, are simply talking about what generally accepted values that are backed up by reason. For instance, now the value we place on money, the value we place on water. Everyone knows that money is used for money is valuable in terms of what satisfaction of our own wants and needs. And what no, of course, we know that not all things that money can buy. Money that, like they say, can only buy you things, but cannot buy you happiness. But however, this is just simply talking about the objectivity that we place on what viewing or looking at the value or the preference that we place, or the sense of worth that we place on money, is an objective value. Water too is what a generally accepted fact that no human individual or no any living thing can live without water, because, like God was saying that in this Surah Al-Anbiya, whereby God was saying that وَخَلَقْنَا مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ وَخَلَقْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. That we created all things, all living things that are living, from water. Even plants, there must be water before they are even created. Talking about humans, what happens before a man is being created? He must come from what? That drop of sperm, or whatever you want to call it, or semen. What drop of water, of course. So this is why that people don't actually think that water is a necessity to life. So this is simply all that we are going to say today. If we have any questions, please, you can drop them into my own inbox. You can. I would like to use this medium or this opportunity to thank Dr. M.S. Minjibur and Prof. Adeti Jani, that is the current Dean of the School of General and Entrepreneurial Studies. And for when talking about Dr. Minjibur, who is the Deputy Dean, of course, he has been working so tirelessly, and seeing how this program can actually come to light. So thank you. If you have any questions, you can drop them in my own inbox. When I come back, I'm going to address your issues. Thank you very much. This is Dr. M.A. Saulawa signing out. I wish you the best of luck in your understanding of this course, and particularly this module 3 of my own version. I hope we meet someday. Thank you.